So, traditional Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, to understand
atheist and agnostic as well as many types of religion.
Hey, Preston.
Hey, Katie.
I'm doing a Bible study.
Oh, no.
Welcome to the Holy Watermelon bonus episode.
It's been a long time coming. I know you've been reading for a little while.
I've been listening. I should clarify that I am listening to the New Revised Standard version of the Bible. It's my first time going through it in any great length. I'm reading it chronologically in order from Exodus to wherever it ends, Revelation.
The Revelation is the end, yeah.
So I've made it all the way through Joshua, and we've just started Judges.
Ooh,
And
Judges
now
is fun.
We're going to get a little theological, which is a bit divergent from our regular episodes, and do a Bible study for an atheist. So I'll probably be a little bit sassy and deny Christ. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Good.
Well, let's start with Genesis. What notes do you have from Genesis?
Well, I didn't take notes, but now I'm going to have to.
But you have thoughts. You remember stuff.
I mean, the thing that stands out most in my mind, and this isn't an original thought, this is from religious study school, is that there's two origin stories of the planet. Mm-hmm. And I think people don't talk about it. There's the Adam and Eve in the garden, and they were made, one they're made at the same time and one they're made from his rib.
Yeah.
Eve is made from Adam's rib, and then there's one where they're made at the same time.
Yeah.
And one time it took 7 days, and one time it was... They're two different stories.
They're two different stories. One of them is a little bit more drawn out, a little bit more poetic, but they both serve a purpose, I guess, is the effective description of what's going on.
I mean, it's to explain things they couldn't explain at the time.
Well, and I mean, surface level, they're hardly even incorrect. I mean, you can argue about the order of things happening, but broadly speaking, the world came into being, and then as Genesis proceeds, the nation of Israel comes into being. And then you can start arguments by getting into the nitty-gritty details.
Yep. I mean, being an atheist, I just approached it as a story, right? Mm-hmm. It's like reading Lord of the Rings for me. It's
for sure.
Cool. But none of it in my brain, I would say, is factual. We were just talking at dinner about Moses being a real person. Obviously, that's Exodus, but and whether he's real or not. But yeah, I read this more like a novel, or listen to it more like a novel than I would a reference book for life.
Yeah, the book of Genesis is the book that has the most arguments about, is this actual history or is this allegorical? And people will argue about that probably until the sun burns out. Who knows?
Yes, I don't know how anyone could think it's factual. Sorry, that's probably really harsh, but...
the first couple of chapters are the most problematic in that way.
I'm thinking specifically of Noah and the flood and Ken Ham with his Ark Museum, and I forget where it is, Arkansas or wherever, somewhere in the Bible Belt, where he's adamant that 10,000 years ago there was a giant flood on the earth. And
he's adamant it's a lot more recent than that.
Is he? That the earth is only 10,000 years old, so therefore it would be... And that dinosaurs coexisted with humans, and that carbon dating is all just a scientific... I don't know what. But,
so... I have a frustrating scientific relation with carbon dating.
Oh.
So
Are we not going to be friends after this?
I don't think it should be a problem for
Okay.
you.
I don't know what you're going to say. Ken Ham has it right.
What's the word I'm looking for? The quantum xeno phenomenon is the phenomenon where it's been noted for a long ass time that when you look at atoms, they don't decay. Like, we know carbon is a product of other bigger decayed elements breaking down.
Yep.
But the fact that you can't watch it happen, that a watch pot doesn't boil, in the molecular physics realm, a watched atom doesn't split. It's super weird that the universe is keeping this secret from us. And so carbon dating, though pretty much reliable, is still slightly funky. That's about it. That's my complicated relationship with carbon dating.
Fair, right? Like, if they say a dinosaur is 3 trillion years old and it's 4 trillion years old.
Is that a big deal? Is that a big difference?
I mean, technically, yes, it is a huge difference.
On a geological scale,
but
yeah.
All we need to know is that it's fucking old.
Right.
And older than 10,000 years.
Yeah.
Is what matters. Yeah. And then there's just a whole bunch of names.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, genealogy is hugely important in this theological scheme of things.
But I mean, there's some other noteworthy stories. Again, I've been listening to it, so I'm sorry if I go from Genesis to Exodus, but there's Cain and Abel and Lot, Tower of Babel is all in Genesis. So, I mean, it's just the origin story.
Yeah, it's the origin of the nation and a good handful of stories that, interestingly enough, come from a variety of sources. Because, of course, when the Bible is compiled, or the Hebrew Bible is compiled, it's compiled from slightly different versions of the same stories from the northern and southern kingdoms. And there's also, you've got a bunch of editors called the Deuteronomists.
Oh, interesting.
Like right before the exile, who are largely responsible for putting these together. And there's also the Levitical accounts, things that would have been, or the priestly accounts, rather.
Is that what, I was, sorry, but dude, what do those words mean, like Leviticus and Deuteronomy?
So Leviticus just means belonging to the Levites, basically.
Okay.
And the book Deuteronomy it's a weird Latin word, basically, that means the retelling of the law, repeating the law, which is why Deuteronomy was so hard to listen to after reading the earlier texts, because it was repetition. Yes,
and that was something, I don't know, and I mean, you tell me, is this like a flavor so it's more believable? So, for example, like Lord of the Rings has languages and maps and all this stuff that he never actually put in the books, and it makes it one of the best written fantasy novels of all time. But I texted you one day, I was like, what are all these ites? Like, does it, I couldn't grasp the significance of all the ites. And to the, like, I know there's some I should care about, the Canaanites, the Israelites. I know those are two big ones, but there were so many ites. I'm like, do these matter? Do they matter? Or again, are they just kind of like...
I was so confused when you texted me, is this flavor just to make it more believable? That was never anybody's agenda when they were putting this together.
Interesting, because that's what I feel. Like I said, Joshua, it's all just made up words. I texted him that as well. I was like, this is all just made up words. It's all made up names and places.
But they're not.
To what end?
They're not made up any more than your own name is made up.
I mean, yes, but I also don't just like introduce myself with every person I ever went to school with and where they live now.
Right. But this is a book that situates a people in their geographical neighborhood. And so they're talking about their neighbors and how they are related to their neighbors. And so that's why they address all of that.
Okay, but back to the main question. Are there any
Yeah.
ites that are important other than the two I mentioned?
Only if you want to understand later on in the story how they are related to their neighbors.
Okay, so when does that come up? Is that a place where I zoned out? I'm not going to lie.
The accounts of the kings, you'll see some wars with neighboring nations, and that's
When they
kind
come
of about the deal.
I guess there's probably so many because this was when we were still tribal peoples, like
Yeah.
globally.
Yeah, a lot of your ites, a lot of these other nations do cease to exist during the course of Israelite history. Or get amalgamated together
So
and take on a new
Israelites
name.
are modern day Jews. Is that
No, Israelites aren't terribly modern day anything.
no? I mean, like those would be the ancestors of what we now call the Jewish people.
Yes. Israel and the Israelites are the ancestors of modern day
Jewish people.
Israel and the Jewish people.
And I haven't gotten to King David yet.
But you will.
Okay, because that's I get a better grasp of everything then. But yeah, let's talk about Exodus and Moses' really bad directions.
So I think it's interesting that Moses, he lived, according to the story, he lived in Egypt, at least in or near the royal courts. I mean, the story tells us he was picked up by the princess of Egypt.
So that would put him around Alexandria.
Maybe? We
obviously
can't say for
thousands of
sure
years
what
old,
the
but-
capital of the nation was at the time. At least as far as I know. I bet you there's probably
I've seen books called like Mapping the Bible, so I'm sure
there's
we cracked one open.
there's very likely Egyptologists who could tell me at the time of Moses, and the time is still a heavily argued thing, where the capital would have been most likely.
Mm-hmm.
There's people who argue who the pharaoh would have been at the time, whether he was a black pharaoh or a paler pharaoh is still a matter of argument. We know that there was a huge change in the scheme of who was in charge of Egypt right before the days of Moses. But when he was about 40 was when he actually left his home and family in Egypt and took off to hide in the desert with the Midianites. So at this point... Sorry?
More ites.
Yes, Morites. So the Midianites are the descendants of Midian, who was one of the sons of Abraham.
Awesome.
Like a little while after.
And it was Abraham's Genesis book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most notably with his son Isaiah.
Nope. Isaac or
Isaac.
Ishmael.
Ishmael, yes.
Depending on which one you prefer based on your religious
I was
preference.
going to say that's the modern celebration of Eid al-Adha, I think, for Muslims.
That's correct. So Midian was a later son of Abraham after Isaac and after Sarah had died. So Moses goes to live with them, and he's with them for another 40 years. So he started a family in Egypt, guaranteed, left them all alone when he just bails on the kingdom, goes
What a
to
dick.
hang out with the Midianites. Yeah, a little bit. And then he's with the Midianites for 40 years without ever making contact with his family in Egypt, according to the story.
He's just like... I know technology was obviously very rudimentary back then, but he's just bad at using any of it. Like, no maps, no letters, like nothing. What a guy.
Right? We don't have much strong evidence that he could have read it or written anything, apart from if he was hanging out in the royal courts he probably could read and write. So at the age of 80, according to the story, and I'm suspicious about the stacking 40s, but that's the way the story goes.
People lived a lot longer back then.
That's the way the story goes, is they did. When he's 80 is when God says to him, hey, you need to go back home and free our people. And Moses did not like that.
Oh, no.
He did it, as the story goes, but yeah, his issue with directions. See, if you were paying attention during your reading, right after they leave Egypt, he sends two of his buddies, Joshua and Caleb, to go scout out the Holy Land that they're supposed to inherit.
And then they come back and they're scared of what they find, right? The armies and people are stronger. Or am I jumping ahead?
All of the other spies, they sent some from each of the tribes. And all of the other spies said, these people are huge and scary. We can't go there. But Jacob and Joshua were like, I mean, it's not that bad.
We got God on our side.
Right? And Moses said, fine, we won't go. So that's why they chilled out in the desert for 40 years.
And then,
because it took that long for literally everybody except for Moses,
to die,
Joshua, and Caleb to die.
And then they all go together. Yes, because then God says your people won't get to enjoy your land, your country, but your children will.
Yeah. So what's interesting, though, is that means that when it came time to invade, everybody other than Joshua,
I don't know when Ezekiel shows up.
After Isaiah and Jeremiah.
Are those books?
Yes.
Okay.
They have books named after them.
Okay, because I literally have I didn't know what came after Deuteronomy until I got there. And then, I know Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but...
Yeah, so after...
Anyway, Exodus.
From where you are, for the next little while, it's mostly history.
Yeah.
Occasionally they'll talk about God said such and such and whatever. That'll be the flavor for you, I guess. But for the most part, it's describing history of things that actually happened, with occasionally slight exaggerations. Occasionally a name will be misattributed to a city. But it's history that may or may not be fully accurate.
Well, just like...
But later
history is told by the winners, even. Right? So...
Right. And then later on, you'll get into the prophecies, and that's when it's going to be some trippy stuff. I think I'll potentially have some fun listening to those.
All right. So, Exodus, Moses is lost.
He's not lost.
He's stubborn.
He's losing hope.
But then he goes into Egypt.
No, they just wander around the peninsula of Sinai.
And then he gets these tablets.
Yeah.
But that's like the big deal in Exodus.
It's a pretty big deal. That's the basis of the Pentecost, Shavuot. Mm-hmm. And so he's up in the mountain for a long time, way longer than the food that he took up with him, which probably isn't anything. And then he comes back down from the mountain, and huge chunks of the camp of Israel have decided, Egypt life wasn't so bad. Let's go back to worshiping those gods.
Yeah, Baal.
Pisses Moses off.
Yeah, and God.
Right? So, bad things happen, some fights break out, but meh. The nation survives more or less, and they keep going.
And he goes up twice, right? He goes up once just to talk to God, and then he goes up and he gets the 10 Commandments.
Over the course of the 40 years, he goes up several times.
And the 10 Commandments are kind of boring.
They're not anything terribly crazy. Yeah.
There's most of it is about how God is kind of self-absorbed, and then there's 2 or 3 that are like actually like don't kill people.
Well, yeah, you've got the first few commandments, and I always think it's weird calling it the 10 Commandments or the Decalogue, because if you count it out, it's 14 commandments or 13 or 12 or 11, depending on how you choose to group and break them.
Oh, interesting.
The Protestants and the Catholics have different lists of 10 commandments. Because of the way they choose to break them up, they don't line up exactly the same. Because you've got several thou shalt nots, and sometimes they're similar enough that one group will say, yeah, these are the same. But they agree that there's 10, but the fact that they're not the same 10 shows some evidence that there's a problem here.
I mean, definitely a miscommunication. I'm just trying to find them in my Bible, but my Bible, I was telling Preston, doesn't have chapter verse, so I'm just kind of flipping through.
Yeah, I'd tell you Exodus 20, but that's not terribly helpful to you if you can't navigate in that fashion. Tell us more about this edition of the Bible you're holding. I think it's pretty cool. You pointed it out to me on Kickstarter years ago.
Yeah, and it actually took years to get to me, but I totally appreciate it. And I have like started reading it, but again, I started at the beginning, and once I hit the names,
it gets hard. I get it.
Yeah, maybe I'll pick up the New Testament and read that as a book instead of audiobook. But yes, this is a Kickstarter years ago. It was called Bibliotheca, and the Kickstarter person, he formatted the Bible to read like a novel. So there's no chapter, no verse. It's just kind of paragraphs. He changed some of the language, and like I've told people this and they like lose their minds, but there's so many versions of the Bible. It's fine. But he took out the these and the thous and changed it to more modern language so you could just sort of read it like you'd read Lord of the Rings, because that's what I'm going to go with. It also has a custom designed font and like beautifully wrapped cloth covers, which got the designer and me all excited. And it ended up taking so long because his Kickstarter like went through the roof. So A, he had like production problems, but then B, he wanted to make sure it was correct. So he actually had to take it to scholars at universities and make sure that his, like I said, his the thou edits kept the content as close to accurate as possible. I don't want to say original because
there is no singular original.
Yeah. And, you know, who knows what version he was going off of to even start. So, yeah, no, it's good. But when it comes to an actual where are the 10 Commandments in this book, it makes it a little difficult. But it's definitely easier to just pick up and read. And it's broken into 5 physical books. So you're not carrying around a big honking thing.
Right. It's just weird to look at it and see that the paragraphs aren't justified, which is honestly, in any printed book, it bothers me so much when the paragraphs aren't justified.
I know that's actually a really weird choice for book design. But I will say this is, it depends on what page you flip to, but, you know, poor Preston knows I complain about all these names. And you can really, like, see it. In this, like, you can just like look at a page and be like, this is repetitive. Sorry, not sorry.
That's the way it goes. And genealogy texts really, really bite. It helps when there's a story to break it up, but usually in biblical genealogy lists, it's just so-and-so begat so-and-so, and so-and-so begat so-and-so. And so begat so-and-so. And way too many people who read this out for ebooks sound the same.
Right? And this is, well, I'm listening to the New Revised Standard Version on YouTube, and it's wild. They have different voices for every character, and there's like this jazzy ambiance music. But this is what I mean when I said the ites. Like, I just flipped to this page, but it has Amorites, Hivites, Jebusites, Canaanites, Perizzites. Did I say Hittites? I don't even know. And this is where I go, huh? So, anyway.
Yeah, they're names that mean something to the people a lot
Of the
closer to
time.
when this was written.
Yeah.
And people who lived in the area. They'd be like, oh, you're talking about the people in Sherwood Park, the people in Spruce Grove, the people in St. Albert, the people in Edmonton, the people in Red Deer, people in Calgary.
You're
people in
literally
Airdrie.
doxing us, but okay.
Not quite. My list expanded. And they just list all these people who live in the nearby communities and nearby nations. So it's
Oh, and here's
helps if you were them.
I think this is still Exodus, but like just paragraphs of names that I just want to like, that's where I stop listening.
Lists of names are hard to read. It's really hard to pay attention to them.
And especially when they're names that aren't names anymore. You know, like
Names that nobody uses.
Yeah, I don't know anyone named Aminadab.
That's the name.
I had to say that a few times
You
to be
did.
confident. Anyway, I don't want to drag this on too long because we have a lot of books of the Bible to get through, but Leviticus is all.
It's a legal text.
And is this the tabernacle one? Or is the tabernacle with the measurements?
Yeah, no, that'll be
Leviticus.
Exodus goes through it, and then Leviticus goes through it again. But you're done that. You don't have to worry about it. And then, of course, Deuteronomy goes through the legal code again.
But not the tabernacle.
Right.
Which I actually found the tabernacle more painful.
70 cubits by 80 cubits.
I don't even know what the fuck a cubit is.
So a cubit is the length from your elbow to the end of your fingers.
That's different for everyone, Preston.
That's correct. And thus, this is the value of standardized measurements. Most scholars will tell you that a biblical cubit is around 1.5 feet, about 18 inches, but they all acknowledge that
That
there is
seems
definitely
long.
a few inches
That
back and
seems
forth.
long.
Put your foot against your forearm and tell me that's not 1.5 feet long.
My foot is not 18 inches long.
What? No, your cubit is 1.5 feet long, 18 inches for your cubit, not your foot. Nobody had feet that big.
Oh, okay.
Even
right, 'cause
Shaq doesn't have 18-inch
I got a
feet.
hand. I don't know why I was thinking foot to wrist. Okay, no, you're right. Okay,
Yeah,
fair.
I'm fairly confident
I was
even
thinking
Shaq's
elbow
feet
to
aren't that
wrist,
big.
and I was like, that is not 18 inches long.
Elbow
What
to the end of your fingers.
So, because Leviticus and Deuteronomy are all just like,
So hard to read,
Okay.
unless you really like reading legal texts.
you said it. I was going to say boring shit. Let's move on to Joshua because that becomes more story. And then,
The Book of Conquers.
yes.
Yes.
So Joshua is the friend of Moses from before.
Yep. He's about 40 years younger than Moses, according to the story.
Mm-hmm.
He was born, according to the story, the same year Moses bailed
And
on his
he
family.
rules.
Yeah.
He's a leader.
Yep. So Moses was a great-grandson of Levi, and Joshua, the son of Nun, which Joshua wasn't even his proper mother-given name.
Right.
His name was Hoshea. And then Moses said, no, your name is Yehoshua, which means Jehovah saves. Or Yahweh saves, depending on your linguistic preference. I've gotten awfully used to hearing Jehovah.
Interesting.
And it's it's an interesting thing to do. And he says, and there'll be another come after you. And so all of the Christians since the beginning of the Common Era have basically said the one that comes after Joshua is the Joshua, the Christ.
Oh, see, I thought, and this is why I asked about King David earlier, is that Jesus is the next King David.
Yes.
They're waiting for that king to return. Or so is David a descendant of Joshua?
No.
Oh, interesting.
No. He is and Joshua, the son of Nun, or Hoshea, the son of Nun, is a descendant of Ephraim, one of the sons of Joseph. And David is from the line of Judah, one of the other sons of Israel. Remember, Israel had 13 sons. Jacob is his other name. And 13 sons, and each of the tribes have some significance, though 3 of them are a lot more important than the rest.
Which are the...
So you've got Judah, which is hugely important because the southern kingdom of Judah came from the line of David. Then there's the northern tribe, which is the Samaritans. They're basically led by Ephraim. And then you've got Levi, who's the father of all the Levites, which is the priestly group in both kingdoms. So those are your 3 important ones. If you don't remember the other 9, that's fine.
All right. And then the 12 tribes of Israel has significance, I know, to like Jehovah's Witnesses in particular. And then the number 12 shows up a lot in the Bible.
Yeah. But when it comes to Israel, it's only 12 because they stopped counting Levi as one of the tribes.
Is this why there's a dozen and a baker's dozen? Is this why 13's an unlucky number?
An entirely different kind of numerical philosophy.
Huh. See, this is why I could never go to church, because I'd be the kid asking stupid questions.
I don't think they're stupid questions. They're just not the questions other people are expecting to have you ask.
Oh, dear. Cool. So, Jesus is both for Joshua and King David.
Yeah. There's a variety of roles in Israel. And
Israel's a country and a person.
And a people.
And a people.
Yeah.
So it's a person, people, and place.
Yeah.
So it's like the word fuck.
Kind of.
It's multi-use.
So Israel is the man Israel.
Okay.
And then there's Israel, the children of Israel, which is the nation of Israel. But
and then the literal children of Israel. Or we call those the tribes of Israel. The 13.
So the 13 sons of Israel don't usually get called the children of Israel.
Okay.
They're usually called the patriarchs of Israel.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's Eretz Israel, which is the land of Israel, the dirt on which they walk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ouch. So what else does Joshua do besides lead the people?
He does an awful lot of killing. So when it comes time to enter the land of Israel, they walk in relatively peacefully, though in large numbers it looks awfully aggressive. Everyone's under 40. It looks like an army. And rightly it is. So the people who are already living here, they're like, that's an army. I don't like that. And Joshua says, we can be peaceable and we'll be your neighbors, or you can die.
We're going to fuck you up.
Basically, it functionally works out to that. They walk in, they hope to set up camp and make a home in this land that's been promised to them. There's loads of space between towns anyway. And then when people get really uppity and violent with them, it's like, well, okay, if you're not going to be good neighbors, we will destroy you. because we're going to live here.
So don't be a dick.
Yeah. And so they ended up killing a lot of people. And some parts of the Bible in Joshua say, yeah, and they wiped out everybody. And then there's other parts of the Bible a little later on that say, well, because they didn't kill everybody, this happened.
When do the foreskins come in?
Oh, you've already passed a bunch of that, and there will be more in the future.
Oh, good. So prior to listening to the NRSV version, I have read the Brick Testament. I don't know if I ever told you this about me, Preston. It's kind of I don't know why it would ever come up, but when I get sick, even if it's just like a cold, I will have the most vivid fever dreams you can imagine. And I absolutely fever dreamt about the Brick Testament. It was terrifying.
Tell me more.
I mean, I just there were so many little foreskin pieces and just
those little yellow studs.
the little single round ones. Yeah, I just my dreams were filled with Lego men and Bible stories. It was fucking weird. But
I bet.
I've had some other weird ones, which don't even relate to this podcast a little bit, but I'll tell you about them when we're off air. So let's say this were a real Bible study at a Sunday school or in church. What are the theological lessons someone would take from this? Or what are the, what are the takeaways a pastor would want someone to have from these first 5 books?
If we were going to take a lesson from the first 5 books as a whole, I would say the thesis that somebody should present would probably be something like, God is a covenant-keeping God, because we deal a lot with the handful of prophets who make promises with God and in return are promised a place to live for eternity. And by the end of the 5th book, leading into Joshua, here we are, we're about to receive this promised land, which is a big deal for the people of Israel when historically they've constantly been pulled away from this promised land and then slowly get to come back to it. The end of the Hebrew Bible in a traditional Hebrew setting rather than the Christian Old Testament, it ends with the promise that they'll get to come back to this land right after they're forced into exile. And then here we are at the beginning of the 21st century, and for the last 50 years, 70 years at this point, Israel is gathering again in their Holy Land. So it's the idea of God being a covenant-keeping God is kind of if you wanted to take the 5 books as a whole, that would be the thesis.
Are there any even book-specific ones that you would teach or you would hear, if you want to get more specific?
A Genesis in general, as the whole book of Genesis, probably feels about the same, I think. Again, leading into Exodus the same way the whole Torah leads into Joshua, as we're about to get our land back kind of deal. It's kind of nice. And then Exodus is, as a whole, we have a connection to a God who wants us to behave in a certain way so that we can be a holy nation among the world of people who don't believe, I guess. Leviticus would be, broad strokes, useless to anybody who's not in the priestly caste. I guess. Numbers. Honestly, there's not even much narrative to Numbers. It's
I read Numbers too.
I'm sure that was really hard to listen to. And there was 642,000 Ephraimites, and I don't know.
I mean, I forgot. I literally thought it was Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Joshua. So
Numbers would have been easy to miss.
Yeah.
And for the purpose of your studies, if you had actually missed it, I don't think you were missing anything terribly valuable.
Thank you.
For the purpose of your studies, yeah.
Thank you.
There's not much of a moral to Numbers. Even when I was teaching early morning seminary to a bunch of high school kids for a year, the time we spent on Numbers was very short.
Yeah.
And Deuteronomy, actually, honestly, it was about the same. It was repetition of the law. So any morals you pulled out of Exodus and Leviticus, repeat.
Genesis definitely has the best stories of, and I'll say the first 6 books because I forgot about Numbers. Yeah, I mean, from an enjoyable readability standpoint, Genesis.
Absolutely. Well, Genesis is a storybook.
Yeah.
Exodus has story elements built around some legal codes and philosophical guidance, morality stuff. Leviticus, Deuteronomy, just legal texts, pretty much.
Joshua it's like Exodus.
And then
Story
Joshua,
elements.
I mean, if Joshua was the end of this, that's the climax of, well, especially compared to the stuff leading up to it. Serious action, finally living in the Holy Land.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I feel more holy now.
I like it. I'm glad we accomplished that.
Yeah, I'm going to read more and we'll release more of these episodes as I get a few more books of the Bible under my belt. There's 26?
26?
Books of the Bible?
No.
More?
Way more.
How many more?
In the traditional account of the Hebrew Bible that you're most likely to run into, there's 39 books.
Of just the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah, in just the Hebrew Bible. The Christian Bible, the Christian New Testament, has 27
Okay, that's where I got that number. So this will be, I don't know, 12-part series total. We'll try to do this every 5 books.
Sure.
And I'll let you know how it goes. But I feel like it's going to be me complaining that it's boring.
That's okay. And I'm here to answer your questions.
Thank you, Preston. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. If you're listening to this,
Thank you for supporting us.
For supporting us on our Patreon. If you're not on our Discord yet, please join our Discord channel to continue the conversation. And feel free to add your anecdotes or lessons for me that you might have from your Bible studies.
Peace be with you.
By the late Middle Ages, the Christian prophecy had fulfilled itself.
God is near.